My family stole thousands from my dead husband's life insurance, but when I found out, they also excluded my 7-year-old son from Christmas. I exposed them in front of everyone, and now they're destroyed. I'm 34 years old, I work in marketing, and 2 years ago, my husband Brandon died in a construction accident, leaving me alone with our son Mason, who's now 7. And what I'm about to tell you basically made me realize that my family, like the people who are supposed to be there for me in the worst moment of my life, were actually just waiting to squeeze every last cent out of me. I guess I should start from the beginning, when Brandon passed away, because that's where everything went to shit, even though I didn't realize it until much later. When I lost Brandon, it was like the world stopped. You know, that kind of pain you feel in your chest all the time and you can't breathe right. It was a stupid accident at the construction site, something with scaffolding that gave way, and from one day to the next, I was alone with Mason, who was barely 5 years old, and didn't understand why Daddy wasn't coming home. Brandon's insurance company paid out fast. I have to admit, it was like $300,000, and that amount sounded like a lot of money, but the truth is, when you have a small child and a mortgage and you're trying to hold everything together while you cry in the bathroom every night, $300,000 doesn't exactly make you feel rich. You know what I mean? But my family saw it differently. Like 2 weeks after the funeral, my mom called me and said that Dad and she wanted to invite me to dinner, like a special dinner just for me to see how I was doing. Mason stayed with Brandon's parents, Sandra and Richard, who basically became my saviors through all this. But I'll get to that. The thing is, I arrived at my parents' house and I thought they were going to ask me how I was dealing with everything, if I needed emotional help or help with Mason or whatever. But no. Literally before I finished my appetizer, my dad was already asking me how much the insurance had left. And when I say asking, it wasn't like, "Hey daughter, we want to make sure you're financially okay." It was more like, "So how much did they give you exactly?" I remember sitting there with my fork in my hand thinking, this is weird, right? But I was so tired and so sad that I just told them, I got $300,000 from Brandon's insurance company. And I swear I saw my mom's eyes light up, literally like she'd just won the lottery. And she started with this whole spiel about how I should be very careful with that money, that it was a lot of money, that I had to think about Mason's future. And I was like, yeah, Mom, I know. That's why I already talked to a financial advisor, and a good chunk is going to go into a college fund for Mason, and another part will cover expenses while I reorganize. My dad nodded, but he looked disappointed. I don't know how to explain it. Like he'd been expecting me to say something different. But anyway, I left that dinner feeling uncomfortable, and I thought maybe I was being paranoid because I was so sensitive about the whole Brandon dying thing. What I didn't know is that dinner was basically my mom and dad gathering intel for what came next. For context, I need to explain my relationship with my sister Lauren. Lauren is 2 years older than me. She's 36. And she's basically been my parents' golden child since forever. When we were girls, Lauren got good grades and I got good grades. But Lauren's were special. Lauren got married first, had kids first, 3 total, and my parents act like they're the only grandchildren that exist on the planet. Lauren sells those multi-level marketing products, you know, the ones that are basically pyramid schemes but with essential oils or makeup or whatever. And my parents are always buying stuff from her to support her business, even though we all know it's not a real business. Her husband Kevin works in finance and makes good money, but Lauren is always complaining that they don't have enough money, which I never understood because they live in a house bigger than mine and go on vacation 3 times a year. So like a week after that awkward dinner with my parents, Lauren started calling me. At first it was like, "Hey Char, how are you? Just wanted to see how things are going with Mason." The typical things you'd say to your sister who just lost her husband. But then she started with weird comments like, "It must be a relief to know you're at least financially covered," or, "Brandon was so responsible having that insurance, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, Lauren, I guess so." But inside I was thinking, why is everyone so obsessed with the insurance money, instead of asking me how I'm dealing with raising a 5-year-old who cries for his daddy every night? Then one day, like a month after the funeral, Lauren called me crying. She said she had a financial emergency, that Kevin didn't know she'd overspent on inventory for her MLM business, and that if she didn't pay like $3,000 that week, they were going to lose. I don't know what important thing. And then she said, and I swear this is verbatim. She said, "You know, Char, when I found out about Brandon, I thought maybe it was the answer to my prayers." She literally said that. She said my husband's death was the answer to her prayers, because it meant I had money I could lend her. I was speechless. Like I couldn't even process what I'd just heard. And Lauren kept talking like she hadn't said anything crazy, explaining that she only needed $3,000 on loan and she'd pay me back in 2 months. I promise, little sis. And I was so shocked and so tired of everything that I told her. I'd think about it. I didn't say yes, just that I'd think about it. But Lauren called Mom, and Mom called me like 2 hours later saying, how could I even hesitate to help my sister when I had all that money from Brandon that basically didn't cost me anything to get? Those were her exact words. Money that didn't cost you anything to get. Like Brandon hadn't died for me to have that money. Like it was a lottery prize instead of the result of losing the love of my life. So, I ended up lending Lauren the $3,000. Never saw it back, by the way. And that was just the beginning. Over the next few months, Lauren asked me for money constantly. Like she needed $500 for the kids' school supplies, $800 to fix the car, $1,000, $200 for, I don't know what, medical emergency. And every time I hesitated even for a second, Mom or Dad would call with this whole spiel about how I had a responsibility to my family, how Mason was well taken care of. So, what was the problem with sharing a little? How Lauren was really going through hard times. And I thought, I'm going through hard times too. My husband is dead. But I never said it out loud because in my family that would be considered dramatic. Then summer came, like 8 months after Brandon's death, and my parents organized a big family dinner. We were all there. Mom, Dad, Lauren with Kevin and her 3 kids, and me with Mason. And at some point after dinner, Mom suggested the kids go play upstairs and the adults stay in the dining room to talk. Kevin went with the kids. He was like the only normal one in this whole situation. And it was left as Dad, Mom, Lauren, and me. Dad started with this speech about the importance of family and how we had to take care of each other. And then Mom said they'd been thinking and it would be good if Lauren and I contributed to the family household each month, like to help with their expenses now that they're getting older. Mom is 62 and Dad is 65. It's not like they're decrepit old people or anything, but whatever. The proposal was that we each give $1,000 a month. $1,000. And I was like, wait, what? But Lauren immediately said, sure, Mom. I can do $500 a month. And everyone looked at me. I felt trapped. Like I literally felt like I was in an ambush. And Lauren said, well, Char, you can do 1,000, right? I'd do 1,000, but you know things are tight with the business. But you have that cushion from the insurance. And my parents looked at me with those disappointed faces they'd perfected over the years, and I just wanted to get out of there. So I said yes. I said yes to giving $1,000 a month to my parents, while Lauren supposedly gave $500. I started sending the money every month. $1,000 straight to Mom's account on the first of each month. And every time I did it, I felt sick. But I thought, well, it's my family. This is what you're supposed to do for your family, right? And Mom always sent me little messages thanking me and saying things like, Lauren sent her part too. We're so lucky to have such generous daughters. This went on for like 4 months. $4,000 I sent religiously. And during that time, Lauren kept asking me for extra money for other things, even though supposedly she was also contributing to the family household. And I was starting to feel resentful, but didn't know how to get out of the situation without causing massive family drama. Then one day I was at my parents' house. I'd stopped by to drop off Mason, who was going to stay with them for a few hours while I had a work meeting. Mom was in the garden and I went into the kitchen to get water, and Mom's phone was on the table. You know, one of those old phones that still have a screen but aren't smartphones. And I saw a bank message that said something about a deposit. And I don't know why I did it. I guess something in my brain clicked. But I opened Mom's bank messages, and there they were. All my $1,000 deposits. Each one clearly marked. But there wasn't a single deposit from Lauren. Not one. Not 500. Not 100. Not anything. I checked all 4 months. Lauren had never sent a cent. I felt like someone had thrown a bucket of ice water on me. All those times Mom had told me Lauren was also contributing, all those little messages thanking both of us, it had all been a lie. It was a coordinated trap to get money out of me and make me feel guilty if I complained because supposedly Lauren was also doing her part. I took photos of the messages with my phone. I don't know why. Instinct, I guess. But I felt like I was going to need proof. And when Mom came back from the garden, I acted completely normal. picked up Mason, and left. But inside, I was boiling. I was up all that night looking at those photos and trying to decide what to do. I decided not to say anything yet. I wanted to see how far this went. I stopped sending the money. On the 1st of the next month, I didn't transfer anything. Mom called me on the 3rd day asking if I'd forgotten to make the transfer. I told her I'd had some unexpected expenses with Mason and needed to skip that month. There was a long silence, and then Mom said, "Well, Charlotte, we hope this doesn't become a habit. Lauren always sends her part on time." I had to bite my tongue to not explode right then and there. The November came and Mom called to talk about Christmas. She said this year they were doing something different, that the Christmas Eve party was going to be adults only, like an elegant gathering without kids running around everywhere. And she told me, "You can leave Mason with Sandra and Richard, right? So you can relax and enjoy." And I thought it was weird because we'd always included the kids at Christmas. But Mom insisted it would be nice to have an adults-only night for a change, that the kids got bored anyway with grown-up conversations. Christmas Eve arrived, and I left Mason with Sandra and Richard, who were delighted to have him. Sandra had even bought a science kit to do experiments with him. Mason was obsessed with that stuff. I dressed up nice, bought an expensive bottle of wine, and drove to my parents' house. When I arrived and walked through the door, the first thing I saw was children. Lauren's 3 kids were there, running through the living room in party clothes. There were decorations everywhere, a huge tree, Christmas music, and all my parents' cousins, like my aunts and uncles, with their families and their children. It was a complete family party full of children. All the extended family children were there. Everyone except Mason. I stood in the entrance trying to process what I was seeing. Lauren saw me and came toward me with a glass of wine in her hand, like all casual, and said something like, "Oh, Char, you made it. Where's Mason?" And I said, "With Sandra and Richard, I was told it was adults only." And Lauren made this fake, confused face and said, "I don't think Mom said that. Everyone brought their kids." I went straight to where Mom was talking with my Aunt Rebecca. And I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Mom, you told me this party was adults only, and that's why I left Mason at home, but I see all the family children are here, everyone except my son." The conversation around us stopped. People started looking at us. Mom got all nervous and said, "Well, Charlotte, I didn't think it was appropriate for Mason to be here when you're not even contributing to the family like you should." And there it was. The complete game. They had deliberately excluded Mason from the family Christmas as punishment for not continuing to give them money. My 7-year-old son, who had just lost his dad 2 years ago, couldn't be at the family Christmas because I'd stopped sending my mom $1,000 a month. The room was completely silent now. Everyone was staring at us. And something in me broke. Or maybe fixed itself. I don't know. But suddenly I didn't care about causing a scene. I took out my phone and said, "You want to talk about contributing to the family, Mom? Let's talk about that." I sent her $4,000 over 4 months while Lauren supposedly sent $500 monthly too. Right? But guess what I discovered? I showed the photos of Mom's bank messages on my phone. Held them up high for everyone to see. Lauren never sent a single cent. It was all a coordinated lie to get money out of me. They made me feel guilty for having my dead husband's life insurance money, the money that's supposed to secure my son's future, and they used it to manipulate me. Mom's face went completely red. Dad tried to intervene, saying this wasn't the time or place, but I was already in I don't care about anything mode. And then Lauren stupidly said, "Well, it's just that I really needed that money, Char. You don't understand how hard it is to maintain the business, and Mom and Dad needed help, and you were the one who had the resources." Kevin, Lauren's husband, who until that moment had been in the kitchen with the kids, walked into the room right then. And he said, "Wait, what? What business? What are you talking about?" And that's when I realized Kevin didn't know anything. He didn't know Lauren had been taking money from me, didn't know about the arrangement with my parents, didn't know anything. Lauren went pale. She tried to change the subject, but Kevin insisted. And in front of the whole extended family, the whole truth came out. The loans she never paid back, the $1,000 monthly scheme where she supposedly paid $500 but never did, how my parents had deliberately excluded Mason from Christmas as punishment for not playing along. My aunts and uncles were horrified. My Aunt Rebecca, who'd always been my favorite, said this was the lowest thing she'd seen in her life. How could they exclude a child from Christmas, especially a child who'd lost his father? Other relatives started talking all at the same time, some defending my parents, but most expressing shock and disgust. Mom tried to justify herself, saying I'd been being selfish with the money, that family should share resources, that Mason was well taken care of. So, what was the problem? And Dad said something about how I'd always been the difficult one, the dramatic one, that Lauren needed more support because she had 3 children instead of just 1. And there it was, the real truth. Lauren had always been the favorite, and I'd always been the second choice. And now that I had something they wanted, money, all they saw was a resource fountain for the daughter they actually cared about. I left. Literally grabbed my coat and purse and walked out of that house. Some aunts and uncles followed me outside, apologizing, saying they had no idea what had been going on. My Aunt Rebecca hugged me and told me she was leaving too. That she wasn't going to stay in a house where they treated her niece like this and excluded her great-nephew. I drove straight to Sandra and Richard's house. When I arrived, Mason was at the kitchen table with Richard doing some experiment with baking soda and vinegar. They had homemade volcanoes everywhere, and Mason was laughing. Sandra saw my face and knew something had happened. I told her everything while Richard kept Mason distracted with the experiments. Sandra got angry, like really angry, which was rare because she's the calmest person in the world. She said what my parents had done was unforgivable, that excluding Mason was cruel, and that Brandon would be furious if he knew how they'd been treating me. And then she hugged me and told me they were my family now, that Mason and I would always have a place with them. That night, Mason, Sandra, Richard, and I ate pizza and watched Christmas movies. Mason didn't even ask about the party. He was happy showing me all the experiments he'd done. And I realized he was better off there, in that house full of real love, than at my parents' house where they'd deliberately excluded him. The days after were chaotic. I blocked my parents and Lauren everywhere. Several aunts and uncles contacted me to say they were on my side, that what had happened was wrong. Some stopped talking to my parents for a while. Kevin called to apologize, said he had no idea what Lauren had been doing and that they were in couples therapy trying to work through the lies. I never spoke to my parents again. It's been like a year and a half since that Christmas. Lauren sent me some messages trying to reconcile, but she never really apologized. Like she just said things like, "I wish we could get past this," or "family is important," but she never acknowledged what she did, never returned the money, and definitely never apologized for the comment about Brandon's death being the answer to her prayers. The money I was sending to my parents now goes straight into Mason's college fund. It's an extra $1,000 a month accumulating for when he needs to go to college. I also started therapy, which I should have done since Brandon's death, but better late than never, I guess. Mason is now 7. He's in 2nd grade and still obsessed with science. He spends a lot of time with Sandra and Richard, who are basically his real grandparents. They take him to the science museum, buy him books about space, do experiments together. Mason talks about Brandon sometimes, has photos of him in his room, and Sandra and Richard make sure he knows how much his dad loved him. As for my blood family, the truth is, I don't miss them as much as I thought I would. My Aunt Rebecca and some other cousins stay in regular contact, and they're more real family than my parents or Lauren ever were. I've learned that family isn't always by blood. It's who's there when everything goes to shit. Who loves your child unconditionally? Who doesn't try to take advantage when you're at your most vulnerable point? Last week, Mason asked me if we were going to see Mom's grandparents at Christmas. I told him the truth. That no, this year we're spending Christmas with Dad's grandparents like last year. He thought about it for a moment and then said, "That's okay, Mom. They do better experiments anyway." And that was it. He went back to playing with his Legos. And that's enough for now, I guess. I have an incredible son. I have in-laws who are better parents to me than my own parents. I have a stable job. And I have peace of mind because I'm no longer being manipulated by people who only saw me as a source of money. Brandon's money is doing exactly what he would have wanted, taking care of Mason and securing his future. And at the end of the day, that's the only thing that really matters.